Right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and sorry we're starting just a little bit late today. So thank you for joining us for the second event of the AQMx webinar series, where we'll be discussing the new sectoral guidance that was launched by the CCAC just last month, as well as hear about success stories from key partners. So my name is Juliette Laurent. I'm an air quality specialist at the Climate and Clean Air Coalition Secretariat, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. So today we'll discuss how countries can transition to low sulfur fuel through strong policy coordination to ensure fuel vehicle compatibility, transparent and robust enforcement to guarantee effective implementation, and regional harmonization to prevent fuel dumping and promote fairer trade. So we'll start by doing a deep dive on the new AQMx sectoral guidance on fuel quality improvement, which provides really practical and hands-on recommendations on how countries can transition to low sulfur fuels. We'll also hear about inspiring success stories from our partners at the UNEP Sustainable Mobility Unit, the Ministry of Environment of Cambodia, and the World Resource Institute. So just a note of housekeeping, we'll have time for Q&A towards the end of the session. So please write your questions in the chat. And also note that a recording of this webinar will be made available on the CCAC website. So before we go into the details of the AQMx sectoral guidance on fuel quality, I wanted to give you a brief introduction to the AQMx platform. So AQMx, the Air Quality Management Exchange Platform, is a global one-stop shop for knowledge and guidance on air quality management. This was launched by the CCAC on International Clean Air Day 2024, following the mandate of member states who called for the development of such a knowledge platform in the UNEA 610 resolution. So on AQMx, you'll find three components. The first one is a resource library with more than 1,400 trusted resources to support air quality managers. So anything from tools and models, databases, reports, and scientific publications. And so the AQMx library is being periodically updated as new knowledge products become available. And I encourage you actually to get in touch with the Secretariat if you would like to suggest additional resources. The second key component on AQMx is the air quality management guidance, which covers 8 different areas, from air quality monitoring to emissions inventory, health impact assessment, legal framework and policy design, and so on. And so this air quality management guidance is structured around 5 stages of engagement to support air quality managers on their cleaner journey as they strengthen their capacity. So stages 1, 2, and 3 are already available on the platform, and stages 4 and 5 will be launched on International Clean Air Day in September 2026. And so the last component, of course, is the sectoral guidance. And this was really a key ask from the AQMx user community, who highlighted the need for practical guidance on sectoral mitigation policies to reduce air pollution at the source. And so we really see the sectoral guidance as the implementation guide, if you want, to the SLCP reduction measures that were identified in the CCAC integrated assessment. So as you may know, on the margins of the UN Environmental Assembly back in December, we launched 4 sectoral guidance packages for road transport, of course, but also for the agricultural sector, looking at alternatives to crop residue burning, the household energy sector, focusing on expanding access to e-cooking, and the waste management sector, on the elimination of open waste burning. So this process was led by the CCAC Secretariat, but I really want to acknowledge the contribution of the CCAC sectoral hubs members who were actively involved in the review process, and I want to thank them again for their valuable inputs. And I also want to flag that additional sectoral guidance for the road transport sector is under development and will be launched in March at the Better Air Quality Conference in Bangkok. And these additional guidance packages will cover emission standards and inspection and maintenance of vehicles, and will be a great complement to the AQMx guidance on fuel quality. And so now I'll stop for this quick introduction and will give the floor to Patricia Ferrini Rodriguez, who is the fuel quality expert who led the development of the AQMx guidance and who will give us an in-depth presentation of the content and key recommendations. So Patricia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Juliet, and hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the presentation of the AQMx guidelines for the road transport sector. Today, we focus on improving fuel quality. The AQMx Improving Fuel Quality Guideline is designed as a practical and hands-on resource for policymakers, air quality managers, and other partners. Its goal is to help countries design and implement cleaner fuel policies based on technical evidence and real-world experience. From the CCAC perspective, these guidelines are meant to support people working directly on clean fuels and transport emissions, with practical and policy-relevant guidance that can be applied at national and subnational levels. AQMx is a platform that brings together guidance, tools, data, and real-world examples that are often spread across different organizations and reports. It organizes them into a step-by-step framework from initial assessment and planning through the implementation and monitoring. In this presentation, I will walk through the Improving Fuel Quality Guidance, highlight its main themes, and show how it can be used in practice, including how to navigate the supporting reference and resources. So to start with, I would like to briefly explain how this guidance is structured. It opens with an overview of the challenge of poor fuel quality, with a focus on the current global status of fuels used by countries, particularly diesel. This section highlights the climate, environmental, health, and economic impacts associated with the use of dirty fuels. It then outlines the benefits of transitioning to cleaner fuels, setting up evidence-based rationale for adopting stronger fuel quality policies. Next, we arrive at the core of the guidance to respond to the question: what steps can countries take to improve fuel quality for the road transport sector? This section follows a 10-step implementation framework that mirrors how governments and policy interventions actually function in practice, starting with baseline assessment and then institutional coordination, moving through planning and policy integration, standards, and ending in implementation, enforcement, monitoring, and evaluation. The 10 steps framework does not need to be followed step by step in a strictly sequential manner, as many countries are advancing several of these steps in parallel. Instead of prescribing a rigid pathway, AQMx helps users identify potential gaps in their current approach and connects them to relevant tools, data sources, and existing resources. Beyond the 10 steps framework, the guidance also outlines options for financing fuel quality improvements, supporting policymakers and implementers in identifying appropriate funding mechanisms. In addition, a dedicated session addresses gender and socioeconomic equity considerations that should be integrated into the design and implementation of fuel quality reforms. And finally, at the end, the guidance brings concrete success stories that illustrate how the elements covered in the 10 steps have been applied in real-world context, highlighting practical lessons and pathways for replication. So let's start diving a little bit in each of the topics. I will start with why take action on improving fuel quality. So globally, millions of vehicles continue to operate on fuels with high sulfur content, substantially contributing to emissions of PM2.5, sulfur dioxide, black carbon, and nitrogen oxides, pollutants that are directly linked to premature mortality, cardiovascular and respiratory diseases, and climate warming. Good fuel quality is also important for the effectiveness of vehicle emissions control technologies, preventing locking in higher emissions over the lifetime of the fleet and avoiding health, climate, and economic burdens, particularly in densely populated urban areas. This makes fuel quality reform a critical and time-sensitive opportunity for action. Improving fuel quality is among the most cost-effective and immediate impactful intervention available to governments, and it is a necessary foundation for achieving meaningful health protection, climate benefits, and the full performance of vehicle emission standards and fleet modernization efforts. So at the end of each session, the guideline brings a relevant list of resources linked to the recommendations of each sessions. Some reference and resources are presented as links in the text as well. And here I would like to highlight a recent UNEP CCAC publication called Accelerating the Global Shift to a Cleaner On-Road Diesel Fleet. This publication shows that reducing sulfur content in diesel to ultra-low levels, less than 10 to 15 parts per million, is central to effective transport emissions control and among the most cost-effective action to protect public health and the climate. Ultra-low sulfur fuels allow modern emissions control technologies to work properly, delivering rapid and substantial reductions of PM2.5, NOx, and black carbon, with health benefits that consistently exceed implementation costs. So now going back to the references, I would like to highlight another publication that's called Safe and Clean Vehicles for Healthier and More Productive Societies. This is a publication from the World Bank, and it shows that improving fuel quality is one of the most effective transport policies, as I have highlighted. And the report highlights that poor fuel quality as a major barrier to emission reductions, since high sulfur levels prevent modern emission control technologies from working properly and lock in avoidable PM2.5, NOx, and black carbon emissions, with serious health and economic impacts. So both references demonstrate that rapid fuel quality improvements are feasible across different country contexts and can deliver immediate health and climate benefits, even before large-scale fleet renewal takes place. So moving now to the core of the guideline, I'll start with baseline assessment, which is the first step of the implementation framework. Across the step, we distinguish between two scenarios. One applies to countries with local data and monitoring systems in place, and the other is designed for countries where data availability is absent or limited. This structure reflects the reality that countries are starting from very different positions, and it makes clear that limited data should not be a reason to delay action on fuel quality improvements. Where local data is available, the guidance encourages governments to rely on their own regulatory, monitoring, and administrative systems to inform decision-making, support enforcement, and track impacts. Where data is not available, the guidance shows how countries can still move forward using credible proxies, international reference frameworks, regional harmonization mechanisms, and globally available datasets from trusted sources. Through the baseline assessment step, the guidance also highlights practical recommendations, such as prioritizing high-impact fuels like diesel, aligning fuel quality with vehicle technologies, and embedding baseline findings into planning and regulatory processes. So beyond the supporting sources and at the end of each step, when relevant, the guidelines also bring links to previous AQMx guidances. Here, for example, the links are to air quality monitoring, health impact assessment, emissions inventories, and source attribution. And beyond those reports and technical publications, the guidelines also compile a curated set of databases and directives from regulatory authorities, international organizations, and leading research institutions in the field. This provides users with a quick reference material and serve as a valuable data source, particularly for countries that need to rely on proxies due to data gap. The selected databases were chosen to offer a simple, accessible, and rapid way to support policy analysis and decision-making. So now we move to step 2, institutional arrangement. This step recognizes that effective fuel quality reform is a governance challenge. Even where technical solutions are well understood, progress is often allowed by fragmented mandates across energy, transport, environment, customs, and health institutions. Step 2 emphasizes the importance of establishing a clear coordination, accountability, and ownership from the outset. As with the baseline assessment, this step is structured to reflect different national contexts. The guides distinguish between countries that are fuel producers and those that rely on imports. Rather than prescribing a single national model, the guidance provides a flexible framework. At a minimum, it encourages countries to clarify mandates, formalize coordination mechanisms, and embed fuel quality reform within existing high-level governance structures. It also highlights the value of engaging a broad set of stakeholders, including regulators, industry, research institutions, and civil society, to strengthen transparency and implementation. So moving to next steps, step 3, we talk about planning and design, and this step focusing on turning evidence and institutional arrangements into a clear national roadmap for improving fuel quality. It highlights the need for fuel quality reforms to be well planned, time-bound, and aligned with national air quality goals, climate commitments, and transport policies. Step 3 encourages countries to set a clear national objective, adopt transparent technical standards aligned with international best practice, and communicate these targets early and consistently to all stakeholders. The key message of this step is that effective planning connects ambition with what is feasible. We move to step 4 now, which is policy integration. It highlights that cleaner fuels reforms cannot succeed on their own. To deliver lasting results, fuel quality improvements need to be embedded across government policies, institutions, and planning framework. The guidance encourages countries to integrate cleaner fuels into national climate, air quality, transport, and development strategies, aligning them to long-term goals, budget, and reporting system. The key message is that this integration is essential to sustain progress, unlock finance, and maximize health, air quality, and climate benefits. We move now to step number 5, which is standards and regulations. This step is highlighting where policy commitments are turning into enforceable rules. The guidance highlights that fuel quality standards need to be clear, legally binding, and aligned with international specifications to ensure credibility, compatibility with modern vehicles, and effective enforcement. The guidance highlights the importance of harmonized fuel standards, reliable testing and certification systems, and full alignment between fuel quality and vehicle emissions requirements. Transparency and data sharing are also key to building trust and supporting compliance. The main message of this step is that strong enforceable standards backed by testing, certification, and regional alignment are essential to deliver real health, air quality, and climate benefits. In step 6, we highlight communication and awareness raising strategy. And these steps recognize that technical reforms alone are not enough. Improving fuel quality requires public understanding, political support, and sustained momentum through the transition. A clear and credible communication strategy helps explain why fuel quality reforms matter, builds trust, and counters misinformation. At high level, the guidance encourages countries to clearly link cleaner fuels to tangible benefits, especially improved public health, cleaner air, and climate gains. Open and accessible information is also emphasized as a key tool for maintaining credibility and accountability. Moving forward, in step number 7, which is implementation, its steps highlight that adoption of fuel quality standards is only the beginning. Real benefits are delivered through effective, well-managed implementation across the entire fuel supply chain. These include clear timelines, defined responsibilities, and close coordination between regulators, fuel suppliers, laboratories, custom authorities, and enforcement agencies. The guidance emphasizes the importance of practical implementation planning, including transition periods, compliance support for market actors, and early investment in testing and quality control system. Ongoing coordination, transparent communication with stakeholders, and early problem solving are key to avoiding disruption and ensuring a smooth rollout. Next sequential step is enforcement. And enforcement makes clear that fuel quality standards only deliver real benefits when they are enforced consistently, transparently, and fairly. Effective enforcement protects public health, maintains market integrity, and ensures that compliant operators are not in disadvantage by non-compliance. The guidance calls for a comprehensive enforcement framework that covers prevention, detection, and corrective actions across the fuel supply chain. A strong coordination between institutions, clear legal authority, and transparent reporting are all essential. The key message of this step is that strong enforcement turns fuel quality rules into real-world protection. So now moving to the last 2 steps, which are capacity building and monitoring and evaluation. So these steps highlight that clean fuel reforms last only when strong institutional capacity is in place. Beyond standards and regulation, lasting progress depends on capable public institutions, clear mandates, trained staff, and reliable financing. The guidance encourages countries to strengthen public sector leadership, put robust data and monitoring systems in place, and invest in ongoing training and technical capacity. Regional cooperation and public-public partnerships are also emphasized as effective ways to share expertise, reduce costs, and build long-term capability. The key message is that investing in institutional capacity is essential to lock in progress and maintain enforcement credibility. And this recommendation is followed by the important monitoring and evaluation step. This step highlights that fuel quality reform is an ongoing process, not a one-off action. Regular monitoring and evaluation are essential to check that standards are being met in place, that enforcement remains effective, and that policies continue to deliver results. The guidance emphasizes that value of centralized data system, transparent reporting, and small set of clear indicators to track compliance, enforcement performance, and broader outcomes. The key message is that strong monitoring and evaluation help maintain momentum, strengthen accountability, and ensure that clear fuel reforms remain effective, credible, and adaptive over time. So those are the 10 core main steps of the framework, but the guidelines also bring a recommendation on how to finance fuel quality improvement, which is a very important topic for countries. And the session highlights a clear message. Improving fuel quality is affordable and financially sustainable. Countries do not need to rely on external funding. In practice, even a small, well-designed domestic revenue mechanism can cover ongoing costs, such as fuel testing, laboratory operations, enforcement, and public communication. The guidance presets finance options for low-cost institutional measures to higher-cost infrastructure investments, helping countries to match financial tools to the scale of each intervention. Successful approaches often combine domestic mechanisms such as fuel levies, inspection fees, or penalties, with international support and blended or climate finance. The key message is that transparent and well-governed financing allows fuel quality reforms to be implemented, enforced, and sustained over time. So here I would like to highlight one of the supporting sources, which is a World Resources Institute publication called Access to Climate Finance in Low and Middle Income Countries, 14 case studies in the transport sector. This paper looks at how low and middle income countries access international climate finance for transport, based on a review of more than 830 projects and 14 case studies. The paper identifies key barriers to accessing climate finance and highlights that better access will require strong policy frameworks, improved coordination, target risk reduction to attract private investments, and better monitoring of climate, health, and development impacts. So this paper brings the case for the 10 steps implementation framework that were highlighted by this improving fuel quality guidelines. So going back to the main structure, we also have a topic that addresses gender and socioeconomic equity considerations. This is central to making reforms effective and lasting, because clear fuel policies work best when they protect those most exposed to air pollution and ensure that benefits are shared fairly across society. The guidance encourages governments to integrate gender and equity considerations from the start, including decision-making, target support for small and informal operators, and clean, accessible communication. It also recognizes that exposure to transport-related air pollution is uneven, with low-income communities and people living and working near busy roads facing higher health risks. The key message is that equity strengthens implementation by embedding gender and socioeconomic considerations into fuel quality reforms. And here for the session, I would like to highlight a recent CCAC supported publication called Gender Responsive Approaches to Addressing Short-Lived Climate Pollutants. This publication shows that improving fuel quality, especially reducing sulfur in diesel to cut black carbon and toxic emissions, is not only a climate and air quality priority, but also a gender and equity issue. Poor quality fuels disproportionately harm women, informal workers, and low-income communities who are exposed to traffic-related pollution. The report emphasizes that fuel quality reform deliver the greatest benefits when they are designed inclusively, with strong enforcement, transparent monitoring, and meaningful participation of women and affected groups. So going back to the main structure of the guidelines, we finish with success stories. These case studies show that improving fuel quality is achievable in very different national and regional contexts, from large and small markets to fuel producing and fuel importing countries, and across a wide range of institutional settings. The examples here highlight different paths to success, including regulatory leapfrogging, phased refinery upgrades, regional harmonization, anti-adulteration efforts, and strong coordination between fuels and vehicle standards. The key message is that there is no one-size-fits-all solution, but there are clear lessons that apply across contexts, especially the importance of political commitment, institutional coordination, credible enforcement, and alignment between fuels and vehicles. These examples are meant to inspire adaptation, not replication, and show that cleaner fuel transition is both practical and impactful when built around national realities. We hope the AQMx road transport fuel guidance will be a useful and flexible tool to support fuel quality improvements in your countries. We also welcome your feedback on how CCAC and AQMx can continue to strengthen this work. Thank you all very much. And I'll get back to Juliet.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for this very, very clear and precise presentation, and really for all your work on the sectoral guidance so far. So now we will move to the second part of this webinar, during which we will hear about real-world success stories from key stakeholders in the fuel quality field, who will tell us about best practices and on-the-ground case. So our next speaker is Mr. Shandat Him from the Ministry of Environment of Cambodia. So Cambodia really has been a long-standing partner of the CCAC and has shown great leadership in advancing clean road transport. So Shandat, please take the floor. Shandat, I think you're on mute.
I forgot. Sorry about that.
We
Okay,
can
you
hear
see
you
the
now.
slide? Yep, yep, okay.
Yes,
Yep,
thank you.
thank you. Yep, today I'm walk you through all regarding the Cambodia sugar quality improvement in Cambodia. So to talk about the sugar, we cannot separate the sugar quality commitments, improving sugar quality commitment and air quality monitoring in Cambodia, since that it's quite related. So I would highlight in this presentation about the current situation of air quality and also the air quality monitoring in Cambodia as a large. So in Cambodia, we have around 64 air quality monitoring stations. We combine the reference-based air quality monitoring station around 15, and the other is the low-cost sensor air quality monitoring. So we install across 25 provinces, and the majority concentrated in Phnom Penh, the capital city of Cambodia. So you see on the right side is a snapshot of on average PM 2.5 in Phnom Penh, the capital city of Cambodia, recording from 2017 to 2024. So yeah, we face the increase of the PM 2.5 happening during the dry seasons from January to March, and during the rainy season we can see that the concentration of PM 2.5 is drop and comply with the standards. So here are some like data management and public awareness or data sharing that the MOE are doing. So we have a platform to monitor the data, to collect the data from all stations, and we process the data, and then we issue the data in uh, air quality index, and we publish the air quality data through the Facebook page of Ministry of Environment every day. So let's talk about the policy and regulation that brings the activity of air quality monitoring. In particular, in Cambodia, we have the sub-degree on air pollution, noise, and disturbance issues in 2000. Yeah, it's quite very old. It's around 20 something years already. So we are updating the new sub-degree now. And the sub-degree highlight the importance of reducing the pollution through monitoring the air quality and also taking a measure against the pollution sources. And the next policy document is very important. It's circulars on measures on air pollution prevention and reduction issues in 2020 that highlight 7 key measures that I'm going to talk later for the next slide. So this circular is a stepstones document that build the clean air plan and also other related policy document on air quality monitoring. And of course, through CCAC and UNEPs, we developed the first clean air plan of Cambodia in 2021. The document highlight the source of air pollution in Cambodia, the situation of the concentration of the air pollution and the projection of the air pollution without the taking measure and also with the taking measure. And in the new term of the government, the Ministry of Environment issues the circular strategy on environment. It's a 5-year strategy plan, so it's starting from 2023 and up to 2028. And these are related to the clean angles that are related to the air quality monitoring. So here is some information about the source of air pollution. We have 4 main sources. We classify those are mobile sources, stationary sources, and construction and other sources. So as you can see, the number of vehicles registered in Cambodia is around 60 million. I think maybe almost 70 million now. So the majority of those are motorcycle. And yeah, we have the factory that admits the pollution. So it's around 2,000 factory. That one is the middle size factory. We don't count the small one. And also the construction side also contribute to the air pollution. And other sources like open burning, agricultural waste, forest fire, and so on. Yep. So here I capture the figure related to the concentration that taking from the clean air plan. So the total concentration in 2015, as you can see, the transport, the key 5 sector, including residential, transport, waste, electricity generation, and agriculture. That's the major source of contribution to the air pollution in Cambodia. And without emission reduction measure, air pollution emission could increase between 50 to 150% in 2030 compared to the 2015 level, and predominantly choose to increase the transport emission. So why fuel quality matter in Cambodia? Yeah, as you can see the figure from the clean air plan, the road transport is a major source of urban air pollution, and high high sulfur fuel increase PM 2.5 and health risk. And of course, clean fuel enable modern and low emission vehicle. And this point, I just want to highlight, we face some situation like one big brand car company. So they hesitate to import a new tax vehicle because they're afraid of they might affect their brain, because if we don't have a high quality fuel, so it might destroy the engine. So maybe it's affect their image, because people, if they buy and they fill the tank with the high fuel, high post sulfur fuel, they might affect the engine, so they affect the brand. So we face the challenge also in the past. During we have a discussion with the imported company, car imported company, and also the fuel imported company. So of course, fuel quality reform support the climate change and public health goal. So here, I think, as I mentioned, before there are no fuel quality assessment before 2000. It's before the issues of the government circular on prevention the air pollution. So that circular number 1 is very important. So the Ministry of Environment start to monitor fuel quality after the circular number 1 on the measure to prevent and mitigate air pollution issues. And according to the circular number 1, the assessment from 2021, Cambodia import Euro for fuel quality. And this official administration document signed by minister, and that have 7 measures to prevent the mitigation ambient air pollution. We include the fuel quality, vehicle emission standard are the priority. So yes, effectively implement the circular. The Ministry of Environment established a working group to monitor, evaluate the implementation of measures to prevent and mitigate ambient air pollution. So yes, we have the stakeholder from like ministry, for example, like Ministry of Mine and Energy. Their ministry, they in charge of import the fuel from overseas, because we are not producing fuel country, but we import the fuel from other country. And Ministry of Economic and Finance also play important role, because the General Directorate of Tax and Excise under this ministry, and they play a role like to be a checking point when the fuel import into Cambodia. And we have Ministry of Public Works and Transport also play important role in checking the vehicle when they import, when they want to register and use on road. And of course, we have the General Directorate of Consumer Protection, Competition and Fraud Repression. That's one they check. They go to the depots that sell gasoline to check the quality of the gasoline, to avoid that the adulteration of the fuel. And of course, we also include private sector, for example, like fuel import company and mobile vehicle company. And also they have an association we call Cambodia Automotive Industry Federation. And we have the annual meeting for the working group to collect, to update what we are achieving during the year, and also what they are like challenge that want to solve during among the stakeholder. And also we have the dissemination workshop as well, as a part of promoting or implement the circular strategy number 1. So this is another milestone that we got support from CCAC through the projects called Supporting Cambodia Implement our Euro 4 we call Mission Standard and Roadmap to Euro 6. So through that projects, we produce, I think, 4 main documents. So the roadmap, Euro 6 roadmap for fuel quality, and also the guideline of Cambodia Euro 5 fuel quality monitoring, and Euro 5 vehicle emission standard testing. And we are drafting the joint ministerial declaration on fuel testing and also vehicle testing. It's still ongoing because currently all ministry are under reviewing, because the new government want to avoid the overlaps tasks that are happening in the past. So all ministry need to go back and analyze their role and responsibility again, and issues a new degree on role and responsibility of each ministry. So I think after all ministry can issue the sub-degree on role and responsibility, I think we can continue processing the joint declaration on fuel quality testing and also vehicle testing. I think here to move to Euro 6 vehicle and fuel quality, through that document, we can see some challenges and also potential solutions, such as limited data availability. So I think to address this, efforts should be made to collect, analyze the data on vehicle type, fuel quality, and emission level in the country. And also a lack of institutional capacity, I think, is also very important, because so far only one department under the Ministry of Commerce can analyze the fuel quality. So we want to improve capacity to other ministry as well, for example, like Ministry of Environment. And of course, public awareness is very important, because to give the knowledge to people, so the people can understand the benefit of moving from the high sulfur fuels to a lower fossil fuel is very important. If they know, I think it's also there's a very important momentums that can bring the fuel quality improvement in Cambodia. Of course, I think every activity is related to cost. I think that is important, and coordination among stakeholders is very important as well. So I think that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shandat, for your presentation. Maybe a quick follow-up question, because I know that you have to leave before the Q&A. I wanted to know if there are any mechanisms in place to support cooperation on fuel quality improvement between Cambodia and neighboring countries or countries who are members of the ASEAN.
The existing mechanism, I think we don't have so far. So far we just join the project together and maybe share training together. But for the tangible mechanism, we don't have so far.
Okay, thank you again for your presentation. And actually, that's a great transition into our next presentation, who is on regional cooperation and harmonization of fuel quality standards. So I'd like to welcome Jane Akumu from the Sustainable Mobility Unit at UNEP. So Jane has been leading UNEP's work on fuel quality improvement. And she will tell us about the great progress that has been made recently in terms of regional harmonization of fuel quality standards in Africa. So Jane, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, Juliet and Patricia and the presenter, Shandar, for the presentation. So I will be talking about regional harmonization of fuel quality standards in Africa. Just to repeat what Patricia spoke about, we've also, about the need for a systems approach. We need to look at the introduction of clean fuels together with the introduction of vehicle emission standards. Because the objective, you'll maximize then. Because the objective is, Juliet, are you the one sharing the screen?
Yes, Jane, do you want me to share or do you want to share on your end?
I'd already shared initially. I don't know what has happened. Let me share again. Yes, okay. So
Jane, we can't see your screen. I'm sorry. Is it okay for you if I share your presentation on my end?
Yeah, sure. I thought it was on the screen. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. So slide number, the second one.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so Patricia already spoke about the need for a systems approach where we introduced clean fuels, but also look at the vehicle standards, because the ultimate objective is to ensure that vehicle emissions are reduced. The CCC target under the Global Sulfur Strategy is that by 2030, all countries adopt ultra-low sulfur diesel, which is the 10 parts per million sulfur in diesel, and a minimum of Euro 6 vehicle emission standards. But we have been, when implementing, especially at the earlier days, had an interim target because we saw that countries wanted sort of like a phased approach. So we had an interim target of 50 parts per million sulfur in diesel and Euro 4 vehicle emission standards, because a lot of countries, as you will see in my presentation, were coming from very poor quality of fuels, and they wanted to move to better standards. So we had that interim of 50 parts per million and Euro 4. But of course, the objective, if possible, is to move straight to the 10 parts per million and Euro 6. Next slide, please. So visually, this is what the systems approach. And, you've been hearing about Euro 1, Euro 2. These are just tighter vehicle emission standards to ensure that different or advanced emission control technologies are installed in the vehicles. So you can see under Euro 1, and 2,000 parts per million, the particulate matter, PM 2.5 emissions per vehicle kilometer, that has been reducing as the sulfur levels in the fuels are reducing and as the vehicle emission standards are tightening. And you can see the various categories of the heavy-duty vehicles and the light-duty vehicles. So the objective is to ensure that these small particles that are harmful to health and also to climate, the black carbon, the bigger ones, are reduced to a bare minimum. And you can see moving from Euro 1 to Euro 6, you have almost a 99% or even higher reduction in these small harmful particulates. Next slide. These are just the time frames when the Euro standards were actually introduced. And you can see Euro 5, Euro 4 was actually introduced from 2005, so it's not a new standard. The fuels and the vehicles, so it's already around 20 years old. And already today, Europe is talking about Euro 7. So that's where Europe is heading. So I think the message here I wanted to say is that it's a progressive or a progressive implementation, tightening the fuel quality, but also looking at the vehicle standards. Next slide. So why a regional approach? Before we tackle what we've done in Africa, so why have we implemented this in a regional manner? So the first is that countries have joint import and storage facilities. You'll find that some countries are landlocked. They rely on the same import and storage facilities. So it makes sense to have a regional approach because of the combined nature of fuel import. It also makes economic sense. For example, one country having a different standard to another, makes it logistically very expensive to be able to segregate that fuel and transport it. So it makes sense to have a regional approach. The cross-border trade and movement of vehicles also makes it important to have a regional approach to clean fuels because, for example, this is a map of the Northern Corridor that we have supported within Eastern Africa. And you can see trucks are moving from Kenya to Uganda to South Sudan, to all the neighboring countries. So a regional approach is ideal. Then we also have regional bodies that can help with the coordination and harmonization of this process. And implementation of cleaner fuel standards is much faster. So instead of just going country by country and looking at all the 54 African countries, it makes sense to have a regional approach, grouping countries or sub-regions together and discussing the need for cleaner fuels at sub-region. Next slide, please. This is just, I wanted to show a map of how it has progressed from 2005 up to today. You can see that, globally, there's been a significant shift when it comes to the implementation. This is for diesel, low sulfur diesel, with improvements, the red being, over 5,000 parts per million, and the light blue being the 10 parts per million that we are looking at. So there's been quite some good progress because, for example, in 2005, there was no country in Africa that had, most of the African countries had sulfur levels in diesel between 5,000 and 10,000 parts per million. Next slide just shows the progression of Africa. Next slide, please. So this is how Africa has progressed with the introduction of low sulfur diesel. You can see from 2002 to 2016, when we supported through the CCC, the first sub-regional meeting in East Africa, 2026 where we are today, and then the last map is actually with the regional commitments because we've had Eastern Africa sub-region already with a harmonized standard, and West Africa. East Africa is not at a bad place, but West Africa is, there's still some progress that needs to be done in the implementation, but West Africa as well has regionally harmonized standards. Next slide, please. And now to zoom in to give an example of East Africa specifically, how it was done as a case study. So the East Africa community initially comprised of 5 countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, but more recently other countries have joined in, South Sudan, Somalia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And that's why you see the regional progress is much more advanced in the 5 countries than in the 3 countries that recently joined, because there's a lot of awareness that took place for the 5 countries. So those have gone ahead and implemented the standards quite fast, because we started that sensitization quite early. The sub-region imports mainly from 2 countries, from Kenya and Tanzania. So these have the import handling facilities for the sub-region. Prior to 2020, actually prior to 2013, Kenya had a refinery, an old refinery that was producing diesel at 10,000 parts per million. And you'll see that currently the world is at 10 parts per million. So over 1,000 times, the global standards. And this had implications for cars. Even if you bought the latest vehicle technology, already the fuel was not good enough, and it would disable or harm the technology immediately. The imports for the sub-region then were at 5,000 parts per million, so also very high. So we saw an opportunity in 2010 when Tanzania was introducing their, working on their bus rapid transit, the DAT, in 2010. So they were going to introduce Euro 2 buses, and the fuel imports were at 5,000 parts per million. Euro 2 requires at least 500 parts per million. So we worked with the government through the DAT, the Dar es Salaam Rapid Transit Agency, to introduce the 500 parts per million, and this was introduced nationally. After that, we worked with the CCAC, together with the CCAC, to have this regionally harmonized within the 5 East African countries. So in 2012, this were the regional harmonized standards of 500 ppm were adapted and implemented by the countries. And that's why you saw the map before, in 2016, already 500 ppm there. These were further tightened in 2015, the standards to 50 ppm, again through support to the sub-region to 50 ppm. And more recently, just last year, the sub-region adapted regionally harmonized standards of 10 parts per million. So you can see that it's been a progression from even 10,000 ppm to now 10 ppm through capacity building, sensitization, dissemination, especially the health implications to the countries. That were really compelling reasons why the sub-region moved to cleaner fuels. The next slide, please. So what are the key lessons from the East Africa fuel journey? The first thing that we learned, and this is by the way, the picture is the Dar es Salaam Rapid Transit system. So the first lesson we learned is that what are the international trends? A lot of the countries want to peg their standards to international trends, what is happening, the justification for it. So it was important to show, especially East Africa, that even 500 was still quite a high sulfur level, because international trends by then were at the very worst at 50 parts per million. So it's important to peg to international trends. Then the other is the fuel cost versus the cost of inaction. Earlier on, when we started supporting countries, they were concerned about the cost of the fuel, because low sulfur fuels were actually a bit higher priced, but not significantly. But when presented with the cost of inaction, the health implications of the high sulfur fuels, countries saw the need to just move to the lower sulfur fuels, irrespective of the slightly small cost. Actually, the cost implication now, it's not discussed at all. because the costs have come down. Then there's also need for early adapters or leaders in a sub-region. As I mentioned, that's why I gave the example of Tanzania, even for the 500 ppm. So we find that there'll be one country that is an early adapter that can actually show the other country that it's doable. Then the coordination by the sub-regional bodies is quite important. For East Africa, it's the East Africa Secretariat. We've worked with the SADC Secretariat, with the ECOWAS Commission on this. So the regional bodies have been quite useful in the coordinating this process. There's also need for capacity building of the technical teams, especially the standardization bodies, the government agencies, on why we need to move to cleaner fuels and vehicles, why we need to reduce emissions from vehicles. Public outreach and awareness also quite key. Standards, I think that Cambodia showed the need for standards development and enforcement, a phased approach, but not necessarily. And this, the East Africa example, motivated other sub-regions to also move. In 2020, ECOWAS, the West Africa, adopted regionally harmonized fuel and vehicles. And more recently, SADC is now in the process of finalizing their harmonized standards. And for them, they're not going the phased approach, they're moving straight to the 10 ppm. And hopefully this year, the standards will be submitted to the ministers for final approval or ratification. But we've already finalized with the preparation of the standards. Next slide, please. So this is, I think, my last slide, and I'll not really dwell much on it because I think the next presenter will be talking about this, because I was to talk on the fuels. But the need for, I started with the need for a systems approach. Fuels and vehicles work as a system to be able to reduce emissions. So for East Africa, they also adapted the Euro 4 vehicle emission standards. They've just adapted these standards into national law, but implementation, I think, has not started. It's something that we need to follow up. The West Africa also adapted regionally harmonized standards, as I mentioned, for vehicles. Not country has yet started to implement. And the only country that I would say is actually advanced in Africa is Morocco at Euro 6 vehicle emission standards. That's the only country that has a Euro 6 standard. So the need for vehicle emission standards, I think, is quite urgent. And we saw Euro 4 started to be implemented even from 2004. And the health benefits, there are significant benefits to start ensuring that vehicles that are coming into the region, especially given that the region relies on used vehicles, need to be at this standard for the health benefit. I think that's my last slide, Juliet. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much for sharing this very inspiring story from East Africa, and also again highlighting the need for this systems approach, as you were saying, in ensuring fuel vehicle compatibility, and also the need to support harmonization of standards at the regional level, which is also something that we are highlighting in the AQMx guidance. And so now I'd like to welcome our last speaker for today. So Amos Mwangi, who is the Senior Electric Mobility Associate at WRY Africa, and who will tell us about a new exciting project WRY is implementing in Kenya with CCAC support. Amos, over to you.
Right. Thank you for having me in this meeting. So as you've heard, my name is Amos Mwangi, and I work with the World Resources Institute. I'm working on urban mobility. Electric mobility is just a subset of it, and I'm based in Nairobi. So we were requested to make an intervention in this webinar to highlight one of the initiatives that we are currently working on, supporting the Kenyan government to develop a heavy-duty vehicle subsector strategy and a roadmap for moving to Euro 6 emission standards. So this initiative is funded by the CCSE, as Juliet has mentioned, and this is part of the heavy duty vehicles engines portfolio and engines portfolio. So I'll take the next few minutes to highlight what we are doing. And over the next few minutes, I will briefly outline the context and what the project is doing and some early insights that we've found. I should note before I continue that this work is ongoing and some elements are still under development. And also a lot of what I will talk about builds on what Jane has just finished talking about, because Kenya is a subset of the East Africa community. Um, so for context again, here in Nairobi and similar to many cities in Africa, road transportation is estimated to contribute to about 40% of ambient air pollution. And then nationally for Kenya, the transport sector accounts for about 72% of total fuel consumption. And Kenya is a net fuel importing country. As you heard, the refinery was closed back before 2015. So heavy duty vehicles represent a small share of the fleet, about 3 to 4%, but then they drive a disproportionate share of diesel consumption and air pollution. Um, so I'll quickly give a highlight of what the project is about or what we are seeking to deliver. So we are looking to come up with a heavy duty vehicle strategy for Kenya, which also captures the medium duty vehicles. And let me mention that including the medium duty vehicles in this strategy was a request by the government, because there are many similarities in the way these medium duty vehicles are handled as compared to the heavy duty vehicles. And also because they are used as public transport vehicles, the medium duty vehicles that is. So along with that, we are supporting the implementation of standards that are already available. Jane has talked about that as well, which were already approved, but also projecting forward to see how we can adopt more advanced standards to improve the vehicle fleet and lower emissions in the transport sector. So to deliver this, the project brought together an interministerial task force to address the different elements of the initiative. We're looking at the fuels and vehicles as a system. The task force brings together the various government agencies dealing with vehicles at the point of acquisition, also the ones that deal with the vehicles at the point of importation, and also at the point of operation, that is when they are being used. And also the agencies that are dealing with the fuel availability and the fuel quality. I have to mention also that this task force builds up on the Nairobi Air Quality Working Group, which has supported the Nairobi County in air quality management over the last couple of years. So part of this group is the likes of the Ministry of Transport, which is a sectoral lead for the project, but also the ministries of Energy, Environment, the Bureau of Standards, the National Transport and Safety Agency, which deals with the licensing and inspections. There's also the Energy Regulatory Authority, which is dealing with the fuel quality and availability. NEMA, the counties, among others. So again, this is just a build up on what Jen has spoken about. And I'll just give a quick glimpse at how the landscape has changed. So as you have heard from Jane, and as you can see, Kenya and the region have made quite some steady progress towards improving the fuel and vehicle standards over the years. Back in 2005, Kenya and as well the region eliminated lead in fuel. And then sulfur levels in fuels have come down over time, with low sulfur levels being effective from, that is 50 parts per million sulfur being effective from 2015. Importantly, what we realize is that fuel quality monitoring data from around 2019 showed that we already were importing ultra low sulfur diesel even before a formal standard was put in place. On the vehicle side, Kenya adopted the emissions regulations, requiring newly registered vehicles to comply with a minimum of Euro 4 standards. Um, if you look at this on the flip side, so where we stand now, and Jane has already showed this map, it's from UNEP. Since last year, we now have the ultra low sulfur diesel standards at now in effect in the region, and they have since domesticated these standards so that they are now effective in Kenya. And this is a major milestone and a critical enabler for reducing vehicle emissions. However, if you look at the vehicle emission standards, they exist on paper, yes, but there's not been much of enforcement, particularly for vehicle testing and in-use compliance. So yes, we have a very big win in fuels, but until we pair these advanced emission standards, until we pair the good fuel to the advanced emission standards, then we will not maximize the benefits of the fuels. Jane also mentioned about moving from, to Euro 4 standards and the equivalent kind of fuel. So 90% reduction if you have a Euro 4 standard vehicle, but then you have Euro 4 standard vehicles, but better fuel quality only get 90% reduction in particulate matter as compared to the pre-Euro vehicles. But then if you can proceed to match the very ultra low sulfur quality fuels and the Euro 6 vehicle emission standards, then you're getting 99% reduction because of this combination. So we still have some place to go, even in terms of making this, enforcing this part on the vehicle emission standards as well as the inspection for our country. As you'd expect, so we want to have a baseline. We are currently carrying out a baseline analysis of where we stand in the heavy duty vehicle segment. And as you'd expect, because of the existing aging fleet, the business as usual scenario leads to a steep growth in emissions. If you look at the illustration, the bulk of the particulate matter and black carbon emissions come from the medium and heavy duty vehicles, and that's projected to 2040. So we are currently in the process of modeling the other scenarios in terms of how we move from the current situation to the best. And this will include enforcing the current Euro 4 standards as one scenario. There will be another one that looks at fleet renewal to Euro 6, and another one that's looking at electrification, as well as one that combines the three, that's including fuel reform, standards progression, and then targeted electrification. So the results are still being validated. So unfortunately, I am not able to share them today, but we look forward to engaging interested partners as the analysis is finalized in the coming months. So as I bring this to a close, several points stand out. First, heavy duty vehicles are a priority segment. They represent a small share of the fleet, but they dominate the diesel use and the air pollutant emissions, which makes them a very high impact entry point for air quality and climate action in Kenya. The second thing that stands out for us is this transition cannot be delivered by a single institution. So it requires a very good coordinated engagement across the different ministries. So transport, energy, environment, standard bodies, enforcement agencies, so that we ensure that the vehicle and the compliance systems move together. And then thirdly, Kenya and the region have demonstrated leadership on cleaner fuels. And we have accelerated market readiness for cleaner vehicles. But then fuel and vehicle sequencing is critical. So we have gotten it right for the cleaner fuels. Now advancing vehicle standards becomes more technically feasible, and also it will be more politically achievable. And as you heard from Chandra before, technical feasibility is one of the main reasons OEMs resist change. So that has been the case as well here in Kenya. So if we are able to, we already have the good enough fuels, then the resistance is sort of watered down. The other thing is enforcement matters. So existing fuel and vehicle standards only deliver benefits when they are consistently enforced. So Kenya will need to maintain and enforce the standards that are already in existence. And finally, all of this needs to sit within an integrated strategy, one that aligns individual initiatives on the fuel side as well as the vehicle side into a coherent pathway rather than isolated actions. So, and this is what we'll continue to push for in the coming months. So we are really looking forward to see what we can be sharing in the coming months. So with that, I'll stop here and look forward to further engagements as the work progresses. Thank you, and over to you, Juliet.
Thank you so much, Amos. And yes, really looking forward to hearing some updates about this great initiative along the way. So we have some time now allocated for Q&A. So if you have any question, you can just raise your hand directly, as I don't see any question in the chat. And just to let you know that we're also interested to hear your suggestions on additional AQMx guidance for the road transport sector. So you'll find a poll in the chat that you can answer and tell us about your priorities. So for now, we have an overwhelming majority for electrification of the fleet, which is interesting. And so let's see if there is interest in other areas as well. So I see one hand from Asani. Please take the floor.
Then I question. Hello.
We can hear you. Yes.
All right. My name is Hassan Olumide from Nigeria. So my question to Amos is that we are talking about decarbonization. How do we place the use of low sulfur fuel and decarbonizing the transport sector itself? That's my question basically. I hope I made it. I hope you got my point. Hello. Oh, we'll call it.
So Amos, I think the question was for you. Do you want to take it?
Yes, I can take it. So yeah, I think that's a good question about decarbonizing and talking about low sulfur fuels. So one of the things that we need to appreciate, and even now that many of us have responded that they would be interested to look at electrification on the pole. One of the things we need to acknowledge is that even as we progress to electrification, we will still have an existing fleet. So it is in our interest to move to better technology. As you may have known from your interactions with the CCSE, we talk about the short-lived climate pollutants, black carbon, particulate matter, and the more of these, pollutants are emitted, the more they become climate forcing, and the more we are not decarbonizing in that sense. So we need also to look at the in-use vehicles. We haven't yet stopped the production of ICE vehicles. So we need also to see how we are advancing even as these vehicles are being produced, that they are being produced and contributing to a cleaner environment. I hope that answers your concern, Asani.
All right then.
Thank you, Amos. And we have another hand from Said. Please go ahead.
Hello.
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I have two questions. The first one is particularly going to Jane because she has a broad view of the different regions in the Africa and other continent as well with regards to fuel quality enforcement programs. Enforcement, like Mr. Amos ended, that for us to benefit must be consistently enforced. But we also know that these enforcement programs are quite expensive. So what are some of the lessons, particularly for we in Africa or Ghana particularly, some of the lessons we can adopt from other regions that will be more efficient towards reducing enforcement cost. Yeah. So that's the first one. The second one was what tailored programs can we do for producers? Particularly the refineries that produce these high sulfur fuels, because we were agreed that once the product is available, sometime it will be utilized. So if we can have a deliberate policy that can be tailored towards these older refineries to ensure that they modernize and also lead to production of low sulfur fuel. So these are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Said. Jane, do you want to take the question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Said, for the question. I would say for the first one on enforcement, I think that's quite critical, as we have seen, that we've seen that more countries, especially in the ECOWAS sub-region, have already adopted regionally harmonized standards, but not yet implemented. So enforcement is quite critical. So what we've tried to do in some of the countries is to follow up at sub-regional level to ensure that the sub-regional bodies do follow up and report to the ministers on the enforcement, the need to enforce the standards, but also pairing countries. So in some cases, we are pairing countries to learn from each other to see what can be done. But I think one of the critical issues, especially for Africa and maybe for many of the global South countries, is for the need for the governments to prioritize their quality reduction because of the cost of inaction we've seen, is quite high. So governments need to prioritize and put budget into the enforcement and ensuring that vehicle emissions are reduced to the bare minimum. So I think that's quite critical and a message that we've been sending to governments. They need to prioritize. There are programs how to fund, and I think that has already been covered a bit by Patricia, how this can be covered. So it's critical. Vehicle emissions testing, people can pay a bit for that, but definitely government needs to put in budget to enforce this. And then for the producers, how countries with refineries, I think in today's world, the world is changing. Some years back, there were opportunities and funding that were available for refinery upgrades, but with the changing geopolitics and all that, it's now becoming very hard to get funding, especially for refinery upgrades, especially for countries that even don't have fuel. So having quite good bankable programs or projects, I think it will be critical, but knowing how to fundraise is also another critical issue, especially now that fuels are, funding with the way the global connectivity is, we are moving towards bigger refineries that are able to supply more countries. So smaller refineries, I think, would be hard to and expensive to run. Countries are moving to hubs, sort of, which are much cheaper for the refineries, and then those refineries being a supply options for the other smaller countries. So I think it's for the countries to look at the cost benefit, do that analysis and see whether it makes sense to have a refinery or just be, especially for the ones that don't even have fuel, but also the ones that have fuel, it's important to strategically think of how they can be hubs as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And maybe we have time for one last question. So we have a question in the chat from Bhagat from Bhutan, who is asking what challenges are expected in implementing Euro 6 standards. without the availability of clean fuels, and how can these challenges be addressed? And in addition, what issues may arise if Euro 6 compliant vehicles are operated without fuel that meets the required quality standards? So going back to this question we've discussed on the importance of fuel and vehicle compatibility. So I don't know if one of the speakers want to take that question.
I can start like.
Yes, Patricia, go ahead.
Sorry, then I was going to say, Jane, that I can start from the technical point and then pass to you. Actually, it's very hard to comply with Euro 6 standards without clean fuels. Because actually, when you have dirty fuels, the fuel itself is going to damage the after treatment system embedded in the car. So this car in real life is going to emit more than the standard Euro 6 allows. So the compatibility with Euro 6 is going to be lost after a few runs of the engine because of degradation, because of the quality of the fuel. So as I have highlighted during the guidelines, we stress a lot that actually fuel quality is the entry door to implement more modern technologies in terms of emission standards. Because actually, if they do not go together, then it's very hard to keep the standard operating in the fleet. So the challenge, actually the challenge of making clean fuels available is very important. However, we know from recent studies that actually, in terms of international trading, clean fuels would be theoretically available for more than 80% of the market. So there comes the political side of it, on top of the technical side. So this is particularly important. They have to go together. If countries start, for example, importing Euro 6 standard cars, they would degrade very fast, and then they would not comply with Euro 6 standards anymore after a few runs. So the next point is to make sure that clean fuels are available for countries, and then we have clean fuels available, and then we do have some international challenges in terms of trading that must be addressed. And that's the point I go back to Jane again. So she has a lot of practical examples that can be given in terms of this international harmonization, regional harmonizations in Africa.
And to add, sorry, just to build and to add on to what Patricia said, definitely you need the fuels to be able to effectively operate the Euro 6 vehicle technologies. It's imperative. But what I wanted to also emphasize, and that's why we've been going at a staged approach, is that Euro 6 also, to get the ultimate benefits, you also need to have in-use inspection and maintenance. So it's not enough to say, yes, now we are at Euro 6. As a country, we are now at 10 ppm. It's Euro 6 requires also a stringent sort of like regime or system where you have regular mandatory inspection and maintenance for the vehicles to operate as they should. So I think that's why for us, we went to Euro 4 and then Euro 6, supporting the countries to ensure that they have mandatory inspection and maintenance to ensure that the vehicles remain as, at very low emission levels. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Jane. Thank you, Patricia. I don't see any more questions in the chat, so just in the interest of time, to let all the participants know that the AQMx webinar series will be continuing throughout the month of January. So if you are interested, you can join us next Thursday. We'll be discussing the elimination of open waste burning. And on Thursday, January 29, we'll be discussing alternatives to crop residue burning. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that I really encourage all interested participants to join the AQMx focus group, where you'll be able to actively contribute to the development of new content, new functionalities for the platform. So you can just scan this QR code and fill in a very quick registration form. And so with that, I really want to thank again our great speakers today for their presentation. Thank you all participants for your engagement, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.